This week's edition of Sunday Sit Down brought to you by Cutshaw Chevrolet in Grapeland.
Greg, first off, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you and your subscribers. It's been a long week in Austin, so thanks for making the trip over here to Lufkin to our district office, and I'm really appreciative of your time. So to answer your question, so my background, I'm born and bred East Texas. I was raised on a dairy farm in Rusk County. Actually just right on the Rusk-Cherokee County line there, close to New Summerfield. And so I have a very profound appreciation for the agriculture and forestry industry. It's, of course, the fabric of East Texas. It's our roots are deep in those industries, and they remain deep today. So, at my core, I'm an ag guy. And I always remember that when I'm in Austin, especially with the increasingly fewer number of rural lawmakers that we have. Our voice is very important. So, like I said, born and bred in Rusk County, graduated from Henderson High School, went to Texas A&M, and majored in agriculture economics. As I tell folks, it's the best 5 years of my life. Somehow I was able to squeeze those 4 years into 5, and it really chartered my path to where I am today. And at A&M, I was involved in student government and other service type clubs, and it just gave me a more appreciation for those that serve in different capacities in government and other places. So beyond that, I got married to my wife. We've been married 27 years now, Nikki. We have 2 boys, live here in Lufkin. Garen, who is in college, and then my youngest son, who is a senior in high school. And so we're very proud of them. And anyway, just proud to call East Texas home.
Well, I know there was some redistricting recently that went on. I think Houston County is very happy to still have you. And seems like you're happy to still have Houston County in your area.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're so as most of your viewers will recall, so last session we went through our decennial or every 10-year redistricting or redrawing of political boundary process. And it's a circus when we go through that. And it's really stressful for rural lawmakers because every 10 years, as we all know, with the migration to the urban, suburban parts of the state, we have fewer lawmakers. And so our rural lawmakers, I'll use the word fight. We have to kind of fight to grow our districts to meet that magic number that the Constitution says we have to represent. And so as we went through that process last session, I had a few lines in the sand. And Houston County was kind of my Alamo. Of course, living in Angelina and being adjacent to Houston, the oldest county in Texas, as I proudly remind people in Austin that I represent, I was not going to give up Houston County. When I first ran for this office, I planted my flag in Houston County. It was a critical county to me. And I have made lifelong friendships over there. And it reminds me a lot of my home county where I grew up. It's very much in sync with Angelina County as far as interests go. And so I am so proud to continue to have the opportunity to represent Houston County in the Texas legislature. It's a great honor to call the people in Houston County, not just constituents, but in many cases, friends.
One of the big issues people in Houston County talk about now are property tax evaluations. Homeowners, business people, even our county government are starting to suffer, it seems. I know the legislature's working on that. Do you have some kind of an update on that issue for us?
I do, and thank you for that question, because I want folks to know that property taxes, leading up to this session, when we were sworn in January, was the number, and continues to be the number one issue that I hear about from folks that I represent. So it's a top of mind, top of list issue for me in terms of my focus and energy in Austin this session. The lieutenant governor, the governor, and the Speaker of the House have all been very public about their focus on doing something for property tax relief for property owners in Texas this session. Nobody wants to come home after Memorial Day, when we Durham sine die, without good news for property owners in Texas. Certainly not me. So that has been, I would say, something we've been laser focused on. As a matter of fact, just to show you how important property tax reform and relief is to the Speaker of the House, House Bill 2 is our property tax reform and relief bill. And the Speaker assigns his priorities for our chamber and gives them numbers: House Bill 1, which is the budget, through House Bill 20. And so if we have a House bill that has one of those numbers, that indicates the priority for the Speaker and for the House.
Sure.
And so having House Bill 2 as our property tax bill, I think, speaks volumes about the importance of that in our chamber. So I will say that the Senate and the House both want to, the proposals that have been offered, they both want to buy down school district maintenance and operation property taxes. So I think there seems to be a general consensus on that front. Beyond that, there's a little bit of difference in the House and the Senate plans as far as how we go about providing additional tax relief. I will say that one thing that I personally think that we need to be focused on, which is in the House bill, is appraisal reform. While I've been in the legislature, 2 of those sessions, we have, at different levels, kind of been down the road of buying down property taxes. Not to the tune of, I think, what we're going to see in this session. But what we've never been able to do is really reform our property tax valuation system that is, of course, run by each of our county appraisal districts. And as I point out to people, I know folks argue and point fingers at the appraisal district, but in many cases, they're just following state law. And so it's incumbent upon us, while we're in session, to go about reforming those laws as pertains to, trying to rein in appraisals. And so that's where the Speaker's focused, and I think rightfully so, specifically, and this is controversial, but he has proposed, and I support, capping the growth in appraised values. Right now it's 10%. The proposal in the House would cut it in half and say that your taxable value on valuations cannot go up more than 5% in any year. Because when I hear from people, they're smart enough to know that in most cases, your local government, whether it's the city council, the school board, county commissioner court, in most cases, they're not the ones going up on the property tax rate. It's their property valuations that's driving that increase in their property tax bill. So that's what we need to focus on. And I'm really pleased that the House is focused on trying to rein in those skyrocketing property taxes.
Well, we're hearing from some of our local schools and superintendents a little bit of friction between some of the local schools and some of the state requirements that may be coming up, the role the state plays in our local education. I know some of them have come to Austin and visited with you and other lawmakers about that. Where does that kind of stand, I guess?
Yeah, so, I think it's important as a reminder for some folks that, before I ran for the legislature, I was serving on a school board. I was president of the school board at Lufkin at the time. And so I stand behind no one when it comes to local control. As I remind my colleagues in the legislature, the same folks that elect us elect our local elected officials. And we have to have faith in the voters across Texas to use good judgment that they're putting the right people in place. So having said that, I'm not a big fan of the state government in most cases coming in and telling local officials, elected officials, how to run their local government, and especially when it comes to our public schools. And so a lot of what I do in terms of the public education side of this is I try to remind my colleagues, both on the Public Education Committee, which I do not serve this session, as well as in the House generally, that we need to be mindful of local control and local elected officials. And while I know in some cases, in those cases to be specific, Greg, you know, often what the legislature does in terms of trampling, if you will, or infringing on local governments, whether it's a city council, school board, counties, it's not being driven by Houston County and our local governments. Many times it's what's being done by Houston Independent School District or Austin Independent School District or the city of Houston or Dallas or whoever. And in some cases they do overreach. But a one-size-fits-all policy in response to that, where it does impact our school districts in this case, in Houston County and across East Texas, many times it's just uncalled for and not necessary. And so, I believe in bracketing, as we call it in Austin. If we've got runaway a school district, and Houston is usually the one that people point to, then let's fix Houston ISD. But let's not trample over on the rights of the students, the parents, the teachers, administrators, and the school board members in the school districts across Houston County. And that's not to say that from time to time that we don't need reforms in our policies as it pertains to public education for all of our school districts. But generally speaking, what I usually hear is we just want government to stay out of our hair. And I'm not beyond just public schools. I'm a big fan of letting people have freedom and liberty to kind of do what they want to the extent that it's not impacting other people. So that's a long-winded answer to a short question, but it's something that I'm very mindful of, that I'm a strong supporter of our public schools as a product of our public schools. I want them to thrive. That in many cases, our public schools and our churches are the backbones of our small rural communities, and I think I have a duty to stand up and be a voice for them.
Well, you talked a little bit about some of the unique challenges in our East Texas counties. Maybe you could talk about a few of those specifically, but essentially, looking into the crystal ball, where do you want to see us 3-5 years from now? Where should we be in the near future?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of progress, growth?
Right. Great question, and a very thoughtful question, and I'll try to reciprocate with a thoughtful response. I think, let me start with this. I'll pick up where I just finished, because I've said this since I've been in office and when I ran. First off, if we don't get public education right in the state of Texas, nothing else matters. We have to ensure that we have a bright future by ensuring that we have a population and a workforce that meets the growing demands of a global economy. And we are a growing state. We are a growing region, East Texas. Obviously not as fast as the more populated areas. So we've got to continue to prioritize education at all levels. And let me say here, in the area of education, education has changed a lot, from when I was in school. Now in some of our counties, we have private schools, we have charter schools, we have home schools, we have our traditional public schools, and I support all of them. I mean, parents should have the choice and pick what's best for their child. And so, but whatever that is, we've got to continue to foster an environment at the state levels that allow parents and students to reach that educational attainment that they need to be successful. So that would be first. Secondly, and very importantly, I'm convinced, and you can look at my body of work here over the last really 3 to 4 years. This is where I've spent a lot of my time. And COVID really is um, the catalyst that thrust this and crystallized in my mind. This has to be the focus for our district in East Texas and rural Texas. Access to broadband, high-speed internet. Internet is no longer a luxury. It is absolutely a necessity. Whether it's education, higher education, pre-K through 12, whether it is people that work from home increasingly, whether it's people that in their businesses that retail service, it doesn't matter. Internet is critical for commerce. I think it's a lot of people experienced during COVID when you couldn't go to the hospital or see your doctor. Telemedicine, telehealth. I did it myself. Loved it. I prefer it. If I don't have to drive to my doctor's office and I can sit in the comfort of my living room and have a doctor's visit, that's fantastic. So, for all those reasons and others, not just internet, but broadband internet, which is high speed, high quality, affordable internet, is so important. Otherwise, we will be left behind. We as a region, we as rural Texas, and we as really rural America will be left behind. And so I'm so proud that last session and again this session with House Bill 9, which I'm proud to co-author, which I think indicates the importance of this for the Speaker of the House, we are prioritizing rural broadband and access to broadband in rural parts of the state. We have to continue to champion that. Our citizens in Houston County and across East Texas, they deserve that. It's like rural electrification, back in the 30s. It was a necessity. Broadband, by all standards now, is a necessity. And there's no argument against that in Austin. Everybody wants to help rural Texas and Texans have access to broadband internet. So we're going to continue to laser focus on that and move the needle this session, I think, in a very sizable way. That in my hope, and you said over the next 3 to 5 years, what do I hope for? I hope in the next 5 years that in every corner of Houston County, and I know it's challenging with the Davy Crockett National Forest, but I'm hopeful that everybody in Houston County in the next 5 years has access to reliable high-speed internet. That's my dream, that's my hope, and that's what I'm fighting for and working for. So that is a priority and will continue to be for the next couple of sessions. And then beyond that, Greg, I think, and I've used this line when I was in Grapeland, when I saw you last at their chamber banquet, but I want to keep Texas, Texas. There's a reason why we're the #1 state to do business in. Businesses, people relocating. It's the climate and the culture that we foster. And if I could be more specific, I want to see East Texas remain East Texas. We're different than every other region in the state, and I'm proud of that. And as someone that was born here, that was raised here, that is proud to raise my family here, work here, I want to continue to see that happen. And I think I speak for most of our residents that there's a reason we live here. I tell people all the time, I don't have to live in East Texas. I want to live in East Texas. And I think most people feel the same way. And so that's going to continue to be a focus of mine as well.
Last question. Being a state legislator seems to be pretty underpaid and often underappreciated. So why do you continue to do it? What keeps you motivated to work this hard for this long and for this many people?
It's a great question. My wife asks me that all the time. So as it always amazed me, how many people don't know this, but as your state legislators, and that's not just your state representatives, but also your 31 state senators, and a reminder, 150 House members, we make $600 a month, and it's been that way for many, many decades. And so no one runs for the legislature to make a living. I mean, $7,200 a year, hard to make a living doing that. And in our state constitution, we're considered part-time citizen legislators, which I love that. In that we are citizen legislators. The beauty of our form of government in Texas, and it's different from every other state. There's no one in the other 49 states that have a system like ours, is that we only meet every other year, and we only meet for 140 days, about 5 months. So we get the people's work done, and this is the beauty of this. And then we come home, and we live under the laws that we make. And
Washington, D.C. does not.
Washington, D.C. does not do that. And so we are in touch with our constituents. Whether I'm at my bank working or whether as an employee of the bank. I don't want people to think I own a bank. I don't. But as an employee of a bank, or if I'm at the neighborhood Brookshire Brothers or Harmon Hill Baptist Church on Sundays, I'm in constant contact with my voters. And it is a powerful reminder of their concerns, their voices, and that if I'm out of line, I'm going to hear about it on a very personal basis. And so I love our form of government. I mentioned the word part-time. To be clear, over the last 50 years, especially with the connected digital media society, social media society we live in, there's nothing part-time about being a Texas lawmaker anymore. It is a full-time job. And so we have to be accessible. We are accessible. And so it is demanding to try to be a full-time legislator and responsive, to be a full-time employee and have a job where I can pay the bills, which, again, I'm a banker, and then to be a full-time husband and dad. So it is a balancing act. It takes work every day. But the reason I do it, Greg, is I love it. I love it. I think I get this. I don't think I know. So when I was, very young, all the way through until she passed, my mom was she was all about service, public service, and she instilled in me, much like the ministry, like it's a calling. And so, I didn't necessarily want to or ask, but the good Lord has just given me opportunities to serve the public locally and now in the Texas House. And so, I don't take that privilege for granted, but I love it. I love serving the people. I love, making a difference. I had someone ask me this week in Austin, Trent, why do you do it? And I said, I enjoy being in Austin for session, making laws and representing the folks. I said, but what I really enjoy is the day in, day out, being able to help people that are having issues with their state government, a state agency. That happens whether we're in session or not. And to, get a thank you card, or to see somebody or their family members that thanks me for helping out a family member that was going through a tough time or struggling with something. Now, that's what keeps me coming back. I love doing it. And the last thing I would say, Greg, is, and I think everybody shares this desire, but we all want to leave this place a little better than we found it, especially for our kids and our grandkids. And so, I want to carry this banner flag as long as I can, as far as I can, and then I want to pass it off to somebody, and it was a fresh set of legs, a fresh set of eyes and vision, and let them run for East Texas. And so, anyway, that'll happen at some point. But right now, I'm loving what I'm doing. Like I said, it's a great privilege to represent the folks in Houston County and across House District 9, and I do not take that for granted.